I am Andres Ortiz, 30 years old, living in Knoxville, Tennessee, a small town where everyone knows each other all too well and rumors spread like wildfire. My life revolves around our family diner, a cramped place with worn-out walls, the smell of fried food mingling with the noisy chatter and laughter. That day, like any other, I was rushing back and forth between the tables. Sweat poured down my forehead. My hands gripped a heavy tray of food, desperately trying to keep my balance so nothing would spill. The diner was packed to the brim, the clinking of knives and forks ringing out, orders being shouted from every direction, and an atmosphere of impatience enveloped the entire room like a thick fog. Everyone was hungry, irritable, and I felt like I was racing against time, my feet barely touching the ground. My father, Miguel Ortiz, stood behind the kitchen counter, his face flushed red from the heat, constantly barking orders. "Andres, hurry up, son. Table 3 is waiting for their salad. Stop dawdling." My mother, Carla, was even busier, wiping tables while shooting me disapproving glances, her voice shrill. "What are you doing taking so long? If the customers wait too long, they'll leave. Move faster." I could only nod and swallow my exhaustion. My family had run this diner since I was a child, and it was all we had. But sometimes, amid the rush of people, I wondered whether I was truly living or merely existing. Then suddenly the wind chime at the door rang out its familiar sound, but this time it was followed by an unusual brief silence. The whole diner seemed to hold its breath. I looked up and saw an elderly man walk in, moving slowly, wearing an old but clean suit. He wasn't a regular, but just one glance was enough for the entire place to quiet down. My heart pounded because I recognized him immediately. Vincent Delacroix, the town's most notorious miserly and cantankerous billionaire. He was so wealthy he could buy the whole of Knoxville outright, but his reputation for stinginess was known far and wide. People said he had never tipped more than $1, and whoever served him had to endure his baseless grumbling. The atmosphere in the diner changed instantly, a mix of curiosity and wariness. Customers whispered to each other, some chuckled quietly as if a play was about to begin. My parents reacted like lightning. My father whispered to my mother, "Carla, let Andres serve him. Quick and simple, don't waste time." My mother nodded, then turned to me, her voice lowered but urgent. "Andres, you take Mr. Delacroix's table. Do it fast, do it simply. That's enough. There are so many other customers waiting, don't waste effort on that stingy old man." I just nodded in response, but inside I didn't agree. Mr. Vincent sat at the corner table, his eyes quietly scanning the menu, saying little. His calm demeanor intrigued me. Why would someone as wealthy as him choose this little diner? I decided to serve him carefully and attentively, even though my parents were watching disapprovingly from afar. I approached the table with a polite smile. "Good day, sir. What would you like today?" Mr. Vincent looked up, his voice warmer than I had expected. "A beef sandwich, no onions, and a glass of water." I took the order carefully, then went to prepare it. Throughout the meal, I paid attention to every small detail. When bringing out the food, I set the plate down gently and asked if he needed any extra condiments. When refilling his water, I made sure the glass was clean and the water ice cold. He ate slowly, saying little, but I sensed a quiet peace in the way he sat there, as if he were observing everything around him. My father glanced out from the kitchen and shook his head. "That foolish boy, why waste time on him?" My mother frowned even more, whispering to a regular customer, "He always likes to do unnecessary things." But I ignored them because, to me, every customer deserved respect, no matter who they were. The moment of payment arrived and the entire diner almost came to a standstill. All eyes turned toward Mr. Vincent's table as if this were a familiar form of entertainment. People whispered, "Let's see how much he tips, probably just $1 like always." My heart beat faster, not because I expected a big tip, but because of a strange sense of anticipation. Mr. Vincent took out his wallet and paid the full bill, not a cent short. Then he placed exactly $1 on the table and pushed it toward me. Laughter erupted throughout the diner. Some people whistled mockingly. "I knew it. $1. The miser really is a miser." Others shook their heads in pity, murmuring, Poor waiter. All that effort for nothing. The atmosphere grew noisy and chaotic like a cheap comedy show. But I, in contrast to the uproar around me, showed no anger or displeasure. I bowed politely and thanked Mr. Vincent sincerely. "Thank you, sir. Have a good day." I maintained my dignity because I knew that the size of a tip does not define a person's worth. Mr. Vincent looked at me, his gaze lingering longer than usual as if he were assessing something. My parents approached immediately and openly scolded and mocked me in front of everyone. My father shouted, "You're so stubborn, Andres. Really foolish. Why put so much effort into a cheapskate like him?" My mother chimed in, her voice shrill. "Exactly, son. I told you to just do the bare minimum, and now what? You've embarrassed the whole diner." The customers around us burst into loud laughter, some even clapping in mockery. I stood silently, head bowed, enduring it without defending myself or reacting. I quietly collected the $1 tip amid the prying stares. A wave of shame surged in my chest, burning hot. Why did they have to do this? Why couldn't they let me work in my own way? $1 is still money, isn't it? Mr. Vincent witnessed the entire scene in silence, his eyes resting on me longer than usual, as if etching that moment into his memory. Without a word, he turned and left the diner, leaving behind lingering laughter and a heavy atmosphere. The door closed with the familiar chime, but this time it echoed in my mind like a bell signaling that something was about to change. Only after the door closed did I turn back inside, carrying the lingering feelings of shame and humiliation. I went into the kitchen trying to focus on work, but my mind was in turmoil. My parents continued grumbling. "Next time, don't be so foolish, understood?" I nodded, but deep down I wondered if I had been wrong. Mr. Vincent, he wasn't the bad person everyone thought. The look in his eyes as he left, there was something different about it. I wiped tables, served the next customers, but the feeling of anticipation still hung in the air, as if the story was not yet over. A few weeks passed, and my daily life continued steadily between the family diner and my small, modest apartment, as if that incident had been nothing more than a fleeting moment swept away by the flow of time. Every morning I woke up to the scent of coffee wafting through the damp, musty air of my rented room, then plunged headfirst into the diner, waiting tables from dawn until dusk. My parents still urged me on, the customers remained noisy, and the jokes about the billionaire who tipped $1 gradually died down, becoming only occasional teasing remarks from a few regulars. I tried to forget it, burying that feeling of humiliation beneath layers of busyness. But at night, lying on my old creaky bed, I thought about Mr. Vincent again. His gaze had lingered on me longer than usual. Was it disappointment or something deeper? I told myself I was imagining things, that a billionaire like him had no reason to remember a mere waiter like me. Life in Knoxville remained the same, small and repetitive, with familiar streets, familiar faces, and dreams buried under the weight of making a living. One late evening, as I dragged myself back to the apartment after a long shift, my legs aching and my mind blank, a sudden knock at the door, urgent and heavy, made my heart skip a beat. It was nearly midnight. Who could be coming at this hour? I hesitated for a few seconds, then peered through the peephole. In the dimly lit hallway stood a middle-aged man in a neat black suit, his stern demeanor standing out under the faint yellow light, casting shadows on the cold, tiled floor. I opened the door cautiously, gripping the latch tightly. "Excuse me, who are you? Can I help you?" He gave a slight smile, his voice deep and warm, yet full of formality. "Good evening, Andres Ortiz. I am the personal butler of Mr. Vincent Delacroix. My name is Harold. My employer sent me here." My heart raced wildly, a mix of excitement and fear surging through me. Vincent Delacroix? How did he know my address? And a personal butler, it sounded like something out of a Hollywood movie. I stammered, "Mr. Delacroix, what's this about? We only met once." Harold nodded, his eyes showing signs of weariness. "My employer is gravely ill, Andres. He wishes to see you as soon as possible. He said you are the person he wants to speak with." Those words exploded in my mind like a bomb. He was seriously ill? He wanted to see me? I was so surprised and confused that I stood frozen for several seconds, my thoughts spinning with questions. Why me? I only served him one meal, he tipped $1, and I endured the mockery. Was he perhaps wanting to apologize? Or was this some cruel prank? But looking into Harold's eyes, I saw sincerity. It wasn't a joke. After a moment of hesitation, I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. All right, I'll make time. When? Harold smiled with visible relief. Tomorrow, if you can arrange it. I'll send a car to pick you up at 10 a.m. Thank you. He left, leaving me standing there in a storm of emotions. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, my mind filled with anticipation. What awaited me at a billionaire's mansion? The next day, I took advantage of a break between shifts and asked my parents for the afternoon off. They grumbled but didn't pry much, assuming I was just tired. The sleek black car arrived right on time, and we sped out to the outskirts of town, along winding roads lined with dense trees. My heart beat faster as Mr. Vincent's mansion came into view. A vast, imposing building with white stone columns and lush green gardens. Yet it exuded an eerie emptiness and coldness. There were no sounds of laughter or liveliness, only the chill wind rustling through the rows of trees and long, silent hallways where only a few servants moved quietly like faint shadows. Harold led me inside, whispering, "The master is in his sick room, please be gentle." Each footstep I took echoed on the marble floor, heightening the tension as if I were stepping into another world, strange and mysterious. When I entered the sick room, the sharp smell of antiseptic hit my nose and the sight before me left me stunned. Mr. Vincent lay on a large bed, his body noticeably thinner, his skin pale, surrounded by tangled medical equipment. Heart monitors, oxygen tanks, and the steady beeping sounds. He was far removed from the stern, cold image at the diner that day. Now he looked frail and vulnerable, like an ordinary old man facing death. My heart tightened, a wave of pity rising within me. He opened his eyes, and upon recognizing my presence, Mr. Vincent's gaze became more alert, the weariness in his expression visibly easing. He motioned for Harold to leave, then spoke in a weak but eager voice. "Andres Ortiz, thank you for coming. Sit down. I want to talk with you." I sat in the chair beside the bed, trying to sound natural. "Hello, sir. I didn't expect you to want me here. We've only met once, after all." We began talking naturally and comfortably in scattered, unstructured conversations. He asked about the diner, about my parents, about daily life in Knoxville. I told him about the regular customers, the favorite dishes, even my small dream of opening my own place one day. Mr. Vincent listened, occasionally giving a faint smile, and shared a few stories from his youth about distant travels. The atmosphere in the room gradually warmed, but I could clearly sense the loneliness emanating from him, as if this were the first time in years someone had truly listened to him. When I stood to leave, he gently grasped my hand. "Will you come back to talk with me?" I nodded. "If that's what you want, I'll try. Talking with you is very interesting." The subsequent visits happened quietly and regularly, gradually becoming a new habit in my life. I made the most of every free moment, sometimes skipping entire shifts just to stop by the mansion. Between us, a closeness formed naturally, unburdened by money or status, just two people sitting together, talking and sharing. Sometimes I brought simple snacks from the diner, a homemade sandwich or a few fresh apples, and helped with small things within my ability, like adjusting his pillows, pouring water, or reading the newspaper aloud to him. I saw it as natural, not an obligation, because each time I saw him smile, I felt lighter inside. But deep down, the anticipation remained. He was seriously ill, and I wondered if these conversations were his final farewells. Through Mr. Vincent's fragmented stories, I gradually realized that the town had branded him for life as a miserly, cold, and selfish man, making him an object of scorn and avoidance. He told me about being excluded from community events, about rumors spreading simply because he didn't flaunt his wealth. In his hoarse, weary voice, he admitted that many believed he was stingy just because he didn't tip generously. But that had never been the truth. I listened silently, my heart aching, as I understood that for him it was all a quiet way to test people's character. I also learned that Vincent's children had long ago lost any emotional bond, appearing only when money or interests were involved. He spoke of rare calls from his children, Luke, Amélie, Mark, that always revolved around company shares or bank accounts. "They no longer need this old father," he whispered, his eyes glistening with tears. That indifference had pushed the old man into a lonely old age where no one truly wanted to listen, and I felt that pain clearly in every word. I gradually realized that in his final days, Vincent had almost no one by his side. In that vast, cold mansion, I was the only one who listened and kept him company, filling a void that money had never touched. Each time I left, I would catch Harold watching with grateful eyes, quietly saying that I was the only person Vincent looked forward to. My heart beat faster, filled with both excitement and a heavy sense of responsibility. I was gradually becoming an important part of the life of someone who had once been a stranger, and that frightened me. Yet I kept returning because deep in my heart I knew this closeness was not accidental. Vincent was quietly teaching me something, and the story between us had only just begun. Those afternoons at the mansion gradually became a habit, where I brought a bit of warmth from the outside world into the cold sick room. He told me about distant travels from his youth, about failures he had never shared with anyone, and I listened, occasionally interjecting with trivial stories from the diner. Once, he whispered in a hoarse voice worn from exhaustion, "You know, Andres, money can buy many things, but it can't buy sincerity." Those words echoed in my mind every time I left, making me wonder if he was preparing for something much greater. His condition worsened, racking coughs, days when he lay motionless, but his eyes still lit up when he saw me. Harold the butler would often whisper his thanks. "You are the only light for him now." I nodded, but inside I was filled with apprehension. Who was I to be chosen? And if he passed away, what would become of me? One day, while I was bustling about in the diner, my phone rang from my apron pocket, a call from an unknown number. I wiped my hands on the apron and stepped into a quiet corner to answer, my heart pounding with a bad premonition. Harold's voice on the other end trembled. "Andres, my employer passed away this morning. He went peacefully, but he mentioned you before closing his eyes." In that moment, a void opened inside me, an aching sense of loss spreading slowly that I couldn't name. I stood frozen amid the noisy diner, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. Vincent was dead? The man I had only known for a few weeks, yet who had become my closest friend? I tried to swallow my tears, my voice stuttering. "I'll come. When is the funeral?" Harold gave me the details, then hung up, leaving me in a storm of emotions. Even though I had mentally prepared, through seeing him weaken, through his talks about the final day, the news still stunned me, as if something left unsaid had been forever sealed. I remembered our last meeting just 2 days earlier when he grasped my hand. "You are a good person, Andres. Don't ever change." Now those words felt like a belated farewell, piercing my heart with pain. I returned to the diner and tried to finish my shift, but my mind was in turmoil. My parents noticed something was off. My mother asked, "What's wrong, son? You look like you've lost your soul." I shook my head and said nothing. They would think I was crazy if they knew I had grown close to that stingy old man. That night I lay awake, images of Mr. Vincent flooding my mind. His faint smiles, his fragmented stories, and the loneliness he kept hidden. I wondered if I had done enough, or if I had missed something. That sense of emptiness followed me for days afterward like a silent shadow, making everything around me feel meaningless. I attended Vincent's funeral on a gray morning with light drizzle falling on the road leading out to the Knoxville suburbs. The small church appeared quietly amid the wet courtyard, not as crowded as I had imagined. I paused for a few seconds on the steps, wearing the only old suit I owned, my heart pounding with nervousness. Stepping inside, I quickly realized the funeral was starkly simple, almost chillingly so. No abundance of fresh flowers, no ostentatious display. Just the small church space, the cold seeping through the skin, the faint scent of white chrysanthemums mingling lightly with incense. A plain wooden coffin was placed in the center aisle, unadorned, with only a few modest white wreaths arranged around it. I sat in the back row, carrying heavy emotions, both mourning and confusion at the overly quiet departure of someone I had only recently grown close to. Only when seated there, looking around the sparse and silent space, did I truly feel the bitter contrast. Vincent, the man who once owned an enormous fortune, now lay in a funeral devoid of splendor, cold and lonely, just like his final years. I soon noticed how few people were present, mostly unfamiliar faces, a few former employees, Harold standing quietly in the corner, and some lawyers in black suits. No crowd, no wailing. Townspeople gathered in clusters outside the church, whispering, their eyes betraying curiosity. They had come more out of nosiness than genuine grief for Vincent. I overheard snippets of conversation. The old miser finally died, huh? Probably left everything to his kids. Does he even have kids? I heard they hated him. They stood in the rain, coats soaked, but didn't step inside, just peering in, whispering, as if this were street theater. My heart ached, a mix of anger and pity surging through me. They knew nothing about him, about the afternoons he spent telling me stories, about the loneliness he endured. I sat silently, trying to hold it in, but anxiously waiting. Would his children come? Vincent's children arrived late, entering the funeral with indifferent attitudes, showing no grief or sorrow, as if this were merely an obligatory formality. Luke, the eldest son, tall in an expensive suit, came in first, his face expressionless, glancing at the coffin once before sitting in the front row. Amelie, the middle daughter, followed with her golden hair and designer handbag, whispering something to her younger brother Mark, a young man with a sullen expression. They didn't cry, didn't bow their heads. They just sat there, checking their watches as if waiting for it to end. I watched from afar, my heart racing with angry anticipation. How could they be like this? Vincent had spoken of them with sadness, children who only called when they needed money, who only came when there was something to gain. Now their indifference was plain to see, making the atmosphere even colder. Amid the funeral, I heard some of Vincent's relatives openly discussing matters with calculating tones, speculating about what he might have left behind. A middle-aged man whispered to the person beside him, "He probably left everything to Luke, but I heard there's a new will, wonder what's in it." The other smirked, "Hope it's divided equally, do I get a share?" He was so rich after all. Those words echoed in the quiet church, making me want to stand up and shout, but I held back, my hands clenching the pew. The atmosphere of the funeral was heavy and distant, lacking any real connection or affection for the deceased. The priest read prayers in a monotone voice, but no one joined in. Only the patter of rain on the church roof and occasional sighs. I felt suffocated with tension, as if something unexpected could happen at any moment. Would anyone stand up to speak about the real Vincent? Or would this funeral end in silence? Vincent's relatives and family occasionally glanced at me, an unfamiliar face at the funeral, their eyes pausing briefly before quickly looking away. No one asked who I was or why I was there. They showed no curiosity or annoyance. My presence seemed unworthy of their attention. Where I stood or what I did didn't register with them. I soon realized those glances weren't mere indifference but cold prioritization. They were more concerned with whispered side conversations, discreet nods exchanged among themselves, than with the man in the coffin or the stranger standing quietly in the back. It seemed that in their minds what mattered wasn't Vincent's passing, but who would inherit what once everything was over. Amid all those indifferent glances, I stood silently before the coffin as people took turns paying their last respects. I didn't try to draw attention or join any conversations. I simply bowed my head low. When my hand lightly touched the cold wood, I whispered a quiet goodbye and thanks to a man who, even in his final moments, seemed surrounded more by calculation than by genuine mourning. In that moment, I deeply felt the loss and profound sorrow, because perhaps I alone truly understood the real man and the lonely years behind Vincent's miserly appearance. He wasn't stingy. He was a lonely man, generous in his own way, and now he had gone without anyone knowing. For me, that funeral was not just a farewell, but the end of a life that had never been truly understood. As people gradually left, I remained alone, silently watching the coffin being carried out to the cemetery under the lingering drizzle. Harold gently patted my shoulder, his voice low and slow. Even though he only knew you for a short time, I could tell he saw you as a son. Thank you for coming to his funeral. I nodded in place of words, tears silently streaming down, mingling with the cold rain, closing a chapter of my life that I knew I would never forget. The days following the funeral passed in heavy silence. I returned to work at the diner, waiting tables from morning until night, trying to bury my grief beneath layers of busyness. My parents noticed the change. I spoke less, looked more exhausted, but they only grumbled. "What's wrong with you, Andres?" "Focus. It's peak hours at the diner." I said nothing about Vincent, about those afternoons at the mansion, for fear they would mock me. The town of Knoxville remained the same, with its familiar streets and spreading rumors. Old Delacroix is dead. Who did he leave his fortune to? I overheard snippets at the diner but stayed silent, my heart racing whenever someone mentioned him. At night I lay awake, haunted by images of the coffin and the indifferent eyes of his children. One week after the funeral, as I sat in my tiny apartment sipping cold coffee after a long shift, my phone suddenly rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. My heart leaped. A bad premonition surged through me. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. The voice on the other end introduced itself professionally and coolly. "Good day, Mr. Andres Ortiz. I am the personal attorney of Mr. Vincent Delacroix. My name is Thomas Hargrove. I am calling to inform you that your name appears in the reading of his will. The meeting will take place tomorrow at my office in downtown Knoxville." I was stunned and bewildered, completely unable to understand why I would be involved in a billionaire's will, let alone invited as an official attendee. My hand gripped the phone tightly, my voice stuttering. His will? I didn't mishear, did I? I was just a friend of Mr. Vincent. Mr. Hargrove gave a slight chuckle. "That is correct, Mr. Ortiz. Mr. Delacroix specified it clearly. Please arrive on time, at 10 a.m. He hung up, leaving me sitting motionless in the dark room. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spinning with countless questions. Why was I invited to the reading of the will? Was it just a small gift or a thank you for the times I kept him company in his final days? That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, suffocated by anticipation, imagining every possible scenario, from a symbolic sum of money to... No, I cut off that train of thought. I didn't dare think further. On the day of the reading, I woke early, put on the same old suit from the funeral, and drove to the lawyer's office with my heart racing chaotically. The office was in a tall building in downtown Knoxville, a place I rarely visited. Gleaming glass, marble floors, and a solemn atmosphere that only heightened my nervousness. As I entered the conference room, I immediately saw it was already packed with Vincent Delacroix's children and grandchildren. They sat around the long table, faces tense, whispering among themselves. Luc was at the head, Amélie beside him with her golden hair, and Mark at the end with a sullen expression. There were also distant relatives, faces I had only glimpsed at the funeral. My presence caused many to stare in surprise. No one recognized me or understood why a stranger was there for the reading of the will. I sat in the last chair, trying to stay calm, though my hands trembled under the table. A few people bluntly assumed I had entered the wrong room and demanded I leave. A middle-aged man, likely a relative, turned to me sharply. "Who are you? This is a family meeting. You're in the wrong room." Amélie shot me a disdainful glance. "That's right, no one here knows you. Get out." My heart pounded, my face flushed with embarrassment, but I shook my head. "The lawyer invited me here." The room grew noisy, whispers spread quickly, some suspecting I was Vincent's secret, illegitimate child. "Look at that. Probably some hidden bastard," someone murmured. "The old man kept it well hidden, huh?" I sat silently, swallowing my anger, anxiously waiting. Would the lawyer confirm it? Finally, Mr. Hargrove entered, his voice stern. "Everyone, please be quiet. Mr. Andres Ortiz is a legitimately invited guest as specified by Mr. Delacroix." The room fell silent for a second, then the whispering grew louder. After a brief moment of confusion, some suddenly recognized me as the person who had frequently visited Vincent in his final days, when they had occasionally spotted me at the mansion. Mark suddenly jumped up as if remembering something, pointing at me. "I remember now. You're the one who kept visiting him, right? The butler said you were just a waiter from some diner." That recognition changed the looks in the room, from curiosity to contempt and disdain. In their minds, I was merely a lucky waiter receiving a small handout from the old man. Luke smirked. "Probably just a few $100 charity for this poor guy." Emily laughed along. "So lucky, going from waiter to minor heir." I sat silently, my heart racing with anticipation and anger, but said nothing. Explaining now would be pointless. Lawyer Hargrove called for order and began reading the will. He announced that Vincent Delacroix had amended his will in his final days with full signatures and medical certification. The room fell completely silent, all eyes fixed on him. Then he read, "The entirety of Vincent Delacroix's estate, valued at an estimated $2.6 billion, including real estate holdings, corporate shares, investment funds, and trust accounts, is bequeathed in full to Andres Ortiz. Vincent's children and grandchildren shall receive no inheritance whatsoever." In that moment, I froze in place as if struck by lightning in the chest. The entire $2.6 billion fortune belonged to me? My mind spun, my ears rang, the lawyer's words slipping past without sinking in. I just sat there, motionless, unable to believe what I had heard. In stark contrast to my numbness, the room exploded. Chairs were shoved back forcefully, papers scattered, shouts overlapping one another. "What the hell is going on?" Luke roared, his face red with rage. "This can't possibly be real." Amelie burst into tears, her voice breaking with fury. "It's a lie. This must be a forged will. My father would never leave everything to an outsider." Mark slammed his fist on the table, the sharp sound echoing through the room. "What did this bastard do to the old man?" Luke Delacroix could no longer contain himself. He strode straight toward me, pointing in my face, his voice trembling with anger. "What did you do to my father? You took advantage of him while he was weak and forced him to sign this, didn't you? Who the hell do you think you are?" Amelie also rushed forward, her eyes full of undisguised contempt. "Just a cheap waiter. What trick did you use to deceive him? Pretend to pity him and steal the fortune. You lowlife." Mark shoved his chair aside, grabbed my collar, his breath hot in my face. "Listen carefully, give it all back. If you don't, I swear you won't have a single peaceful day." My heart pounded, cold sweat pouring down my back. I was bewildered but not afraid. I didn't speak, didn't defend myself, because I knew that any words now would only add fuel to the fire. I just sat still, looking straight at them, letting their rage pour over me. Lawyer Hargrove stood abruptly, his voice cutting firmly through the chaos. "Enough! This will is completely legal, with full medical certification and valid witnesses. Anyone who continues to disrupt will be removed from the room immediately." The room gradually quieted, but the atmosphere remained tense as a drawn bowstring. No one said another word, only hateful and disappointed glares directed at me. Finally, Vincent's children and grandchildren stormed out of the office in fury. Luke punched the door hard before leaving, grinding his teeth. "This isn't over." Amelie hurried out crying while Mark turned back for one last look at me, his eyes filled with hatred. I left last, quietly walking out of the room that had just changed my entire life. In that moment, the enormous fortune brought no feeling of victory or luck. It weighed heavily on my chest, like a burden I was utterly unprepared to bear. On the drive home, my mind was in turmoil. $2.6 billion? What would I do with it? And those threats, would they stop? The sense of anticipation did not fade, like a premonition of an even greater storm. That night, I sat alone reviewing everything from the $1 tip to our final conversations. Vincent had chosen me, but why? This story, though shocking, had only just begun. I lay on the old, worn-out sofa in my small apartment, the streetlights filtering through the window casting faint, ethereal streaks of light on the walls. Everything around me remained the same: the chipped wooden table, the cold cup of coffee, and the distant hum of traffic from the street below. But I felt as though I were lost in an entirely different world. Vincent, that lonely man, had left me not only his fortune but also an enormous burden. I wondered if he had known that this choice would thrust me into a whirlwind of greed and resentment. The night dragged on endlessly, and sleep came only in fits, haunted by chaotic dreams of the angry glares from Luc, Amélie, and Marc. In the aftermath of the will reading, I had not yet come to terms with suddenly becoming the heir to an immense fortune. Everything had happened too quickly, far beyond anything I could have imagined. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache, as if my mind had been overloaded. I looked around the apartment, where I had lived for 10 years with its simple furnishings and old family photos, and wondered, am I a billionaire now? The thought sounded absurd, like a cruel joke played by fate. I tried to go to work at the diner as usual, waiting tables and serving customers, but my hands trembled and my mind wandered. My parents looked at me strangely. "What's wrong with you, Andres? You're dragging your feet too much today." I forced a smile and said nothing, unsure how to explain. Deep down I was afraid of the change, afraid of what was coming. I recalled Vincent's words. Money is a double-edged sword, Andres. It can save or destroy. At the time I had only nodded, but now those words felt like a warning coming true. In just one night the news had spread throughout the town. Wherever I went I felt eyes following me, whispers and open discussions unabashed. Knoxville is small, and stories like this spread like wildfire. When I walked into the diner that morning, customers were already murmuring, "That's Andres, the one who inherited all of old Delacroix's fortune." I pretended not to hear, but my heart raced with anxiety. When I stepped out to buy coffee, the vendor grinned widely. "Congratulations, the town's new billionaire." Their gazes changed from pity to envy, from friendliness to scrutiny. I felt as though I were being watched, every gesture examined. By the afternoon, the local newspaper had run the story. Waiter inherits $2.6 billion from Stingy Billionaire, complete with a candid photo of me taken at the diner. My hands shook as I read it, feeling as if my private life had been turned inside out. Anxiety surged. Would Vincent's children take action? Would this town still feel like home? I tried to avoid everyone, but it was futile. The news was like a flood, sweeping away my last remnants of peace. While my mind was still in turmoil that evening, my parents unexpectedly showed up at the apartment, arriving suddenly and urgently like a gust of wind without warning. The knock came at dusk, just as I was sitting alone in the quiet room trying to sort through my chaotic thoughts. I opened the door and they practically burst inside, their faces flushed with excitement. My father, Miguel, slapped me hard on the shoulder, his voice loud and hurried. "Son, we heard everything. You really inherited all of old Delacroix's fortune? Why didn't you tell us sooner?" My mother, Carla, immediately threw her arms around me, her shrill voice echoing in the small apartment. "Oh my God, my son is really rich now. The papers say over $2.5 billion. Is that true?" "How much exactly, son?" Before I could respond, they plopped down on the sofa, eyes shining, talking nonstop. My heart raced with surprise. They had come so quickly. What choked me was this. They didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask what I had been through. My father suddenly lowered his voice, staring at me intently with a hint of reproach. "But tell me honestly, if the newspapers hadn't reported it, if people in town hadn't been whispering, Would you have ever told your parents about this?" My mother jumped in immediately, her voice both sweet and sharp. "That's right, son. With that much money, if it hadn't leaked out, would you have kept it all to yourself? Not even tell your own parents?" Those questions left me speechless. I stood frozen in the familiar room, realizing that in their eyes there was not only joy but also suspicion and wariness. Without waiting for my answer, they quickly moved to what they truly cared about. From the moment they entered, Miguel and Carla wasted no time beating around the bush. They immediately brought up the fortune I had just inherited and demanded to manage it on my behalf. My father spoke bluntly, his voice firm. "Andres, you're still young and inexperienced. You wouldn't know how to handle that much money. Let your parents manage it for you. I'll invest it, do business, make sure nothing is lost." My mother nodded vigorously, cutting in. "Exactly, son. You're too trusting. You'd get cheated easily. Let me handle it. We're family, aren't we?" They gave every excuse. I was young, lacked experience, didn't know how to hold on to money, and could easily lose such a vast fortune. My father told stories of acquaintances who went bankrupt from bad investments. My mother repeatedly mentioned youthful impulsiveness. But I saw it clearly. They didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't ask about Vincent, didn't ask about his final days. The only thing they saw was the money. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm despite my racing heart. "Mom, Dad, thank you. But this was Mr. Vincent's clear final wish. He chose me, and I can't just hand that responsibility over to anyone else. I'll manage it myself." In that moment, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. When they realized my firm stance, my parents quickly changed their tone. The familiar scolding and pressure vanished, replaced by flattery and sweetness. My father grinned broadly, his voice noticeably softer. "Yes, my son is so capable, smart and mature." My mother grasped my hand, her voice gentle. "My dear, filial piety comes first. Now that you're rich, you have to think about your family. Share a little to take care of your parents, the diner, your relatives. You don't want us to suffer, do you?" They recalled the hard years, the debt of raising me, the days we all worked together at the diner, tired but still able to laugh together. I listened, my heart aching. In that moment, I realized my parents were completely uninterested in my emotional state, oblivious to the mental shock I was enduring. They didn't ask if I was scared, if I was exhausted, or what I had lost when Vincent passed away. The only thing they cared about was the enormous fortune now in my hands. In the end, I didn't answer immediately. I said quietly, "I need time to think. I haven't decided yet how I'll use this money." My parents looked disappointed but didn't dare escalate the tension. They stood up reluctantly. My father patted my shoulder again. "Think carefully, son. But hurry, we're waiting." My mother hugged me once more, beaming. "Love you so much, my little billionaire." The door closed. The apartment sank back into silence. I sat there alone, my heart heavy, realizing that money hadn't just changed how others saw me. It had also exposed things within my own family that I had never dared to face before. As the door closed, I sat quietly in my apartment, seeing how the already fragile family bonds now revealed clear cracks, with money suddenly becoming the thread controlling everything. I leaned against the wall, sighed deeply, tears rolling down my cheeks. Anxiety about the future. Would they come back? Would I lose my family because of money? That night I revisited childhood memories. Simple meals, warm hugs from my mother, lessons from my father. Now all of it was clouded by greed. I knew the storm was far from over. I lay awake, staring at the mottled ceiling, wondering if Vincent had foreseen all this when he chose me. The next morning I woke early and tried to go to work at the diner as usual, but everything had changed. Customers whispered, co-workers stole glances, and I felt like a hunted animal in my own hometown. The troubles didn't stop at my parents' demands or the prying looks around town. I began facing fierce backlash from Vincent Delacroix's own children and grandchildren. At first it was just small signs. A strange call in the middle of the night, a deep male voice whispering, "You'll regret stealing our family's fortune." I hung up, my heart pounding, thinking it was a prank. But then came a series of anonymous letters, slipped under my apartment door or mailed, with threatening words in bold capitals. "Give back the fortune or you'll die." Attached were candid photos of me at the diner or clippings from newspapers, annotated with malicious captions portraying me as a smiling fraud. They left me in a constant state of tension and unease, as if someone were watching my every move. I checked the windows before sleeping, changed my phone number, but it was useless. They found other ways, sending anonymous emails. "You think you deserve that fortune? You manipulated the old man." My heart raced every time the phone rang. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by nightmares of being chased and attacked. Anxiety surged. Would they stop at threats or would they act? They also actively used local media to smear my reputation, painting me as an opportunist, a con artist who manipulated a frail elderly man to seize his wealth. Within days, local papers were flooded with articles. Waiter steals billionaire's fortune, a Knoxville scam story, complete with candid photos of me and quotes from anonymous sources, undoubtedly from the Delacroix family. The articles depicted me as a schemer who exploited Vincent's loneliness to force him into signing the will. Rumors spread rapidly on local social media filled with vicious comments. "This guy probably drugged the old man. He deserves jail." My hands shook as I read them, feeling as though the entire town had turned against me. Customers at the diner dwindled. Some regulars avoided eye contact, whispering behind my back, "Don't let him serve our table, he's a fraud." I became increasingly isolated, even though I never spoke up to defend myself. I chose silence, knowing that arguing would only worsen things. But that isolation made me more anxious than ever, like waiting for a ticking time bomb. My parents called, their concern sounding fake. "Son, the papers are saying bad things about you. Let us manage the money for you before they take it away." I refused, but my heart ached. Not long after, I received a court summons. The plaintiffs were none other than Vincent's children, officially escalating everything into a legal battle. The summons arrived by mail, stamped with the Knoxville court seal, accusing me of will, manipulation, exploitation of a senior, and inheritance fraud. My heart tightened as I read it, feeling as if the ground were collapsing beneath me. Hargrove, my lawyer, called immediately. "They've sued, Andres. But the will is solid, we'll win." I nodded over the phone, my voice trembling. "I'm ready for this fight." Faced with the heavy accusations, I chose silence, neither explaining nor justifying myself, placing my trust in the law and the truth. I didn't respond to the press, didn't post anything online, just quietly prepared, hiring lawyers, reviewing evidence. But night after night, I tossed and turned, anxious about the trial. Would the truth prevail? Had Vincent prepared enough? On the day of the trial, I walked into the courtroom feeling utterly alone, facing a formidable team of lawyers representing the Delacroix family on the opposite side. The local courthouse was packed. Reporters, curious townspeople, and the family seated in the plaintiff's row, their eyes full of hatred. I wore my old suit and sat beside Hargrove, just the two of us against their team of 5 lawyers, with Luke, Amelie, and Mark behind them, whispering among themselves. The pressure from the opposing family, the media, and public opinion made the courtroom atmosphere suffocating, as if every arrow were aimed at me. Reporters snapped photos relentlessly. The crowd murmured, "That guy's going to lose." My heart pounded, cold sweat breaking out, anxiety choking me. Could I endure this? The plaintiffs presented a barrage of arguments to prove Vincent had lacked mental capacity and that I had exploited the situation to manipulate the will, aiming to force me to back down. Their lawyer, a tall man with a booming voice, declared, Mr. Delacroix was gravely ill and not of sound mind. The defendant, Andres Ortiz, approached him and coerced the signing under duress. They produced fabricated evidence, statements from former employees, doctored photos, causing the crowd to stir. I sat silently, hands clenched, feeling stabbed in the back. Anxiety peaked. Would the court believe them? On our side, my lawyer clearly demonstrated the will's legality, from the date of execution to the procedures and required certifications. Hargrove stood, his voice calm. The will was signed when Mr. Delacroix was fully competent, with medical confirmation and witnesses. Vincent's personal butler and treating physician, individuals the old man had designated in advance, took the stand one by one to testify about his clear mental state when amending the will. Harold the butler, his voice trembling. My employer was completely lucid and chose Andres voluntarily. The doctor confirmed. There were no signs of cognitive impairment. They also affirmed my frequent visits and care for Vincent in his final days with no evidence of coercion or manipulation. Andres only talked with him, brought food, nothing more. With each testimony and piece of evidence, the trial gradually illuminated the truth. The initial accusations lost their weight. The crowd grew quieter. The plaintiff's confident expressions turned to worry. I realized that Vincent had planned and prepared everything meticulously long ago to protect his final choice. Through the evidence, video footage of the signing, medical reports, I saw he had anticipated this battle. My heart warmed with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. He had protected me even from beyond the grave. After many tense sessions, the court ruled in my favor and confirmed me as the lawful heir to the entire estate. The judge banged the gavel. The case is concluded. The will is valid. The crowd buzzed. The plaintiff's faces drained of color. Despite the victory, I left the courtroom with a heavy heart. Justice had been served, but the cost was profound loneliness and deepening cracks in the relationships around me. Reporters swarmed the exit, shouting my name, but I silently slipped away, got in my car, and drove home alone. My parents called to congratulate me, but beneath the flowery words was an unmistakable, calculating tone. The town continued to gossip. Those who once called themselves friends gradually distanced themselves as if my victory somehow made them uncomfortable. I sat alone in the quiet apartment, letting my thoughts drift back over the journey, from the humiliating $1 tip to standing in the defendant's dock. The anxiety lingered, but now it was no longer about the past. It was directed toward the future. What would I do next? Vincent, you gave me the greatest lesson of my life. Justice always has a price, and not everyone has the courage to pay it. The news of my victory in the lawsuit spread rapidly throughout the town. This time, there were no more doubts or suspicions. Everyone believed that I had truly become the sole owner of that immense fortune. Just the next morning, the local newspaper ran it on the front page. Waiter wins lawsuit, officially inherits $2.6 billion from Billionaire Delacroix, accompanied by a photo of me leaving the courthouse looking exhausted. The story spread like wildfire, from coffee shops to supermarkets, from social media to neighborly conversations. When I stepped out to buy breakfast, people turned their heads to stare and whispered, "There he is, the new billionaire. He's filthy rich now." I clearly felt the shift, no longer vicious rumors calling me a fraud, but a reluctant acknowledgement mixed with envy. My heart raced with anxiety. Now that everyone knows, what will they do? Will my last bit of peace vanish? I tried to avoid people, returning home earlier than usual, but my phone rang incessantly. Unknown numbers, congratulatory messages laced with hidden motives. The change in how people looked at me happened almost instantly, from avoidance to curiosity, then to open expectations and demands. At first, it was fake smiles from neighbors. "Hey Andres, congratulations. Now that you're rich, remember to help out your friends, okay?" Then gradually they showed up at my door, bringing sad stories and reasons why they needed money. My parents were the first to appear without beating around the bush or holding back. They bluntly demanded that I give them a share of the fortune, treating it as a given. They came to my apartment in the evening, my father knocking forcefully. "Open the door, son, it's us." Once inside, he plopped down on the sofa. "Andres, now that you've won the lawsuit, the fortune is yours. But we gave you life, raised you. You have to share with us. At least half, so I can expand the diner." My mother chimed in, eyes gleaming. "That's right, son. You can't keep it all." That would be unfilial. A heated argument erupted right there in my small apartment. I stood before them, firmly refusing, asserting that it was lawful property and I had the right to decide. I tried to keep my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. Mom, Dad, I love you. But this was Mr. Vincent's final wish. I can't just divide it arbitrarily. I need time to think about how to use this money meaningfully. My father's face immediately turned red. He slammed his hand on the table in anger. What are you saying? I raised you all these years and now that you're rich you start preaching morals? That money has to be shared right now. You're not going to share with your family? Or are you planning to give it to outsiders? I tried to explain, my voice hoarse. I'm not saying I won't take care of the family, but I can't go against the wishes of the man who left it to me. My mother burst into tears, her voice trembling with resentment. Son, how can you say such things? We suffered for you, worked hard to raise you, and now that you have money, you turn your back on us? What will people think of your parents? The air in the room grew thick. My mother's sobs mixed with my father's shouting echoed off the narrow walls, suffocating me. I could clearly feel the rift widening right before my eyes. No longer just an argument, but a threat of permanent separation. I took a deep breath, trying not to let my voice shake. Please understand me. I'm not abandoning the family, but I also can't do something I know is wrong. My father glared at me, his voice turning ice cold. So you've made your decision, haven't you? I nodded, my throat tight. He turned away, pulling my mother up, and spat one last sentence before storming out. You'll regret this decision. The door slammed shut, the sharp sound reverberating in the empty apartment. I stood frozen for a long moment before collapsing into a chair, gasping for breath. Tears fell, silently, not from fear, but from the unbearable pain of realizing that some boundaries, once drawn, hurt beyond endurance even when they are right. It didn't stop there. Distant relatives and neighbors came knocking one after another, even people I had never met or whose names I barely knew. The next morning, a very distant cousin I had only vaguely heard of showed up. Andres, I'm your cousin. Heard you're rich now. Lend me some capital for business, okay? We're family. Then the next-door neighbor arrived with her child. Andres, we're struggling. My kid is sick. Help us out a bit. You're so rich now. The requests were disguised as family ties, hardships, or mutual aid, but they all revolved around money. Loans, investments, even outright begging. I held firm, refusing everyone, whether acquaintance or stranger. I'm sorry, I can't. I haven't decided anything about the money yet. But with each refusal, my heart beat faster, anxious that they would turn against me, fearful of new malicious rumors. Even old friends started appearing more often, leading to awkward meetups and subtle hints about the fortune. A high school friend texted, Andres, long time no see. Now that you're rich, buy me dinner, let's catch up. When we met, they grinned. You're so lucky. Remember, I'm struggling, help me out a little? The conversations always circled back to money, borrowing, joint investments. I declined politely, but I was utterly exhausted. My life was completely upended. I constantly had to deal with acquaintances and strangers alike, explaining, refusing, until I was drained both physically and mentally. The phone never stopped ringing. The door was knocked on all day, and some even waited outside the diner. I couldn't sleep or eat properly. My mind was stretched like a taut string, anxiously awaiting the next request, fearing that one day I would break. When people realized I wouldn't yield, their attitudes quickly soured. The fake smiles vanished, replaced by resentment. Malicious rumors began spreading again, branding me as greedy, selfish, stingy, someone who thought only of himself. At the diner, customers whispered, Andres is rich now, but so stingy. He won't help anyone. On social media, comments flooded in. He stole old Delacroix's fortune and now hoards it all. Greedy. My parents confronted me one last time, no longer trying to stay calm. My father looked at me with unfamiliar eyes, his voice dripping with bitterness. Now I understand. You didn't just inherit Delacroix's fortune, You inherited his stinginess and coldness too." He gave a sardonic laugh and shook his head. "Turns out money didn't make you better. It just revealed your true nature. Exactly like that old man, clinging to everything for yourself." I opened my mouth to say something, but my mother was already sobbing, her voice choked with grievance. "I used to think you were different. Who knew that once you got rich you'd become like this? A son who calculates against his own parents." My father took another step forward, his voice low and final. "If you've chosen money over family, then from today on, I no longer exist for you. You won't share. I disown you. Don't call me Dad anymore." My mother broke down completely, shaking her head through tears. "A son who betrays his family, and I'm ashamed of you. So ashamed." Those words stabbed into my chest like knives. I stood there, saying nothing in defense, not pleading, just feeling something shatter irreparably. They turned and left, abandoning me in the cramped apartment that had once been home. Surrounded by criticism and resentment, I realized I could no longer stay in this town. I couldn't bear the hostile stares, the whispers behind my back, the suffocating isolation. I quietly packed my things, sold a few unnecessary items, and closed the old diner in silence. Not a single goodbye. In the end, I chose Bend, Oregon, a quiet small town along the Deschutes River where no one knew who I was, where I came from, or anything about my past or the fortune I carried. For the first time in a long while, I left not to escape, but to breathe. In the silence of that journey, I finally truly understood the loneliness Vincent Delacroix had endured in his final years. I drove along endless roads, the cool northwest wind blowing, watching the scenery pass with a heart full of sorrow. Vincent, he had lived in a vast mansion, wealthy yet alone, shunned by the town for his reputation as a miser. Now I was repeating it, rich but rejected, forced to flee my own hometown. My heart raced with anxiety. Would I find peace in Bend, or would the past follow me? I pulled over by the roadside, watching the river sparkle in the late afternoon sun, tears streaming down my face. "Vincent, you taught me your final lesson. Money cannot buy human connection. A new journey begins, but that loneliness, I now understand it." I continued driving along the winding roads of Oregon, the northwest wind carrying the fresh scent of pine forests, but my heart remained heavy. Bend appeared before me, a quiet small town along the Deschutes River, surrounded by the Cascade Mountains, where people lived slowly without hustle or competition. I bought a small wooden house by the river, furnished simply, an old bed, a desk, and a few books. No flashy signs, no luxury cars. I wanted to blend in, to escape the prying eyes back in Knoxville. In those first days, I wandered along the river, breathing the clean air, trying to dispel the loneliness gnawing at me. But at night, memories flooded back. My parents shouting, the threats from the Delacroix family, and Vincent's sad smile. I wondered if this isolation was the fate of people like us, wealthy but misunderstood. After settling into life in Bend, Oregon, I began formally taking over and reviewing all the asset management files and trust funds that Vincent Delacroix had left behind, treating it as a responsibility rather than a privilege. I was in no hurry, no extravagant purchases, no showing off. Instead, I contacted lawyer Hargrove via video call, requesting that all documents be sent to me. Thick boxes of files arrived by mail, filled with papers, financial reports, and records spanning decades. I spent hours each day at the wooden table under the warm yellow lamp, flipping through page after page. My heart raced with anticipation. This was Vincent's legacy, and I feared I wasn't worthy. Hargrove guided me over the phone. "Andres, Mr. Delacroix arranged everything meticulously. Check carefully, but don't worry, it's all legal." I nodded, but inside I was uneasy. Were there hidden secrets? I started with the major trusts, examining inflows and outflows, and gradually the numbers began telling their own story. The process of working with the lawyer and the asset management team lasted many days. I discovered numerous large expenditures transferred regularly, but not under Vincent Delacroix's name, nor appearing in any public reports. At first I thought it was a system error, millions of dollars flowing out monthly through intermediary accounts with no sender's name. I called Hargrove immediately. "Mr. Hargrove, something's strange here. These expenditures, where do they go? There's no trace of Mr. Vincent." He chuckled lightly on the screen. "Andres, you're digging deep now. Keep checking. That's the most important part." I dug further, cross-referencing invoices, tracing the money through international banks. My heart beat faster as a pattern emerged clearly. These weren't typical business investments, but flows of support. But to whom? And for what? I stayed up many nights, financial spreadsheets glowing on my computer screen, endless columns of numbers before my eyes. The cup of coffee beside me grew cold unnoticed. My chest tightened with anticipation as the pieces gradually fit together, awaiting the moment the truth would reveal itself. Was Vincent hiding a dark secret? Or was this another, deeper layer I had never seen? The funds were routed through intermediaries to hospitals, schools, welfare centers, and community projects across various regions. I tracked each transaction. A $5 million transfer to a children's hospital in Knoxville, no donor name. $2 million to a school in a poor Tennessee neighborhood. Hundreds of thousands to addiction recovery centers in nearby cities. They were scattered across the U.S. and even some international, scholarships in Mexico, shelters in Canada. No direct link to Vincent. I sat frozen, hands trembling as I turned the pages. This wasn't a mistake. It was a system. My heart pounded with excitement. "Vincent, what had you done?" I called the asset management team. A woman named Elena explained, "These have been set up for a long time through anonymous funds. Mr. Delacroix instructed absolute secrecy. But I needed more clarity, needed to compile it all to grasp the scale. When I totaled the expenditures over more than 2 decades, I realized Vincent had quietly allocated hundreds of millions of dollars, estimated between 600 and 800 million USD, for healthcare, education, and community welfare. I used the computer to calculate, adding up the smaller amounts, $10 million here, $20 million there, and the final figure left me stunned. Nearly $700 million spread over 25 years. I slumped into the chair, my mind reeling. Vincent, the man everyone saw as a miser, had given away a vast portion of his fortune without anyone knowing. My heart raced with shock, mixed with admiration. Why did he hide it? I remembered our conversations in the mansion. He had once said, "Helping others doesn't need fanfare, Andres." At the time, I thought it was just words, but now it was reality. I needed confirmation, needed someone who knew more. When I reached out to Vincent's longtime butler for clarification, he quietly confirmed that these were indeed charitable donations Vincent had deliberately kept secret for decades. I met Harold at a small cafe on the outskirts, quiet enough to avoid curious eyes. He looked older, but his gaze was still sharp. "Andres, you found it, haven't you?" He smiled sadly as I asked about the expenditures. "Yes, those were the master's charities. He started in the 1990s after losing his wife. Quietly, through intermediaries, no name attached." My heart raced with anticipation. "Why hide it, Harold? He was wealthy. Why not go public?" Harold sighed softly, his voice lowering. "The master didn't want it. He once told me, if they knew, they'd come for the money, not for me. He wanted to help people genuinely, without needing thanks or recognition." Harold added that Vincent never sought honors or acknowledgement. To him, kindness only held meaning when it was silent and asked for nothing in return. I sat listening, tears silently streaming down. Vincent, he had chosen loneliness to fully protect that pure goodness. I gradually realized that many of the places that had received Vincent's help were the very communities that had scorned, shunned, or rejected him. I cross-referenced the records. The hospital in Knoxville, where townspeople had mocked him as stingy, had received $50 million over 10 years. Schools in areas where rumors of his miserliness spread got annual scholarships. Even our diner, a small grant from a local business support fund. My heart ached. He had helped the very people who hated him. Anxiety surged. Why? Harold explained. The master said, "They hate me for my appearance, but I help because they need it." He held no grudges. Through reviewing the files and the butler's confirmation, I understood that Vincent had deliberately crafted the image of a miserly, cold man, wearing that mask his whole life as a way to shield himself from relationships built only on money and exploitation. He had chosen solitude to keep his kindness pure. I also suddenly realized that leaving a $1 tip that day wasn't humiliation. It was a quiet test of character. The moment flooded back, the mocking laughter in the diner, my parents scolding me, but I still bowed and thanked him politely. Vincent had tested, and I was the only one who didn't change my attitude, didn't grow angry, didn't judge him by that small amount. My heart raced with realization. It wasn't stinginess, it was a test. Harold nodded. The master spoke of you, the one who didn't change over $1. That's why he chose you. I understood that I wasn't chosen out of pity or chance, but because I had acted rightly when expecting nothing in return. I sat silently, tears falling. It wasn't random. He had seen in me what he sought, genuine kindness. That realization left me speechless. For the first time, I felt the enormous fortune was no longer a reward, but the continuation of a path prepared long ago. I looked out the window at the Deschutes River, golden in the afternoon sun. This wealth wasn't for indulgence, but to carry on what he had done, helping quietly. Anxiety mixed with responsibility surged. What would I do? Only then did I truly understand that Vincent had never been stingy. He was only stingy with those who approached him for money, and silently generous with those who treated him as an ordinary person. For decades, he had given away over $700 million. No plaques, no thanks, no recognition. Just to avoid exploitation and keep kindness from becoming a transaction. The image of the miserly billionaire that the town had pinned on him turned out to be armor Vincent had donned himself, accepting misunderstanding and isolation as long as what he gave reached those who truly needed it. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just inherited his fortune. I had inherited a profound lesson. True kindness sometimes demands the price of loneliness, and not everyone has the courage to live it fully as Vincent did. I sat quietly by the window of my wooden house in Bend, watching the Deschutes River flow lazily under the Oregon afternoon sun, holding a cup of cold coffee in my hand. The months here had helped me find more calm, but loneliness remained an uninvited companion. I reflected on the journey of uncovering Vincent's secrets, the silent expenditures, the anonymous charitable funds, and felt my heart racing with anticipation. He had lived that way his entire life, and now I couldn't let him pass without recognition. I knew what I had to do, return to Knoxville and bring the truth to light. But the thought made me anxious. The town had rejected me. Would they listen? Would my parents, who had disowned me, change? The journey back would be dramatic, but I was ready because Vincent deserved it. Once I fully understood everything, I resolved to reveal the entire truth, not just to clear the old man's name, but to give him the fair recognition he never had in life. I spent the following weeks preparing, photocopying records, bank statements, and gathering more evidence from Harold and Hargrove. I called Harold on a secure line. "Harold, I need to go back. Are you willing to testify?" His voice trembled but was firm. "Of course, Andres. The master would be proud of you." Hargrove sent additional documents via email, warning, "You're doing the right thing, but be careful. The Delacroix family is still watching." My heart raced with anticipation. Would they try to stop me? I packed simply and drove back to Knoxville, the long road stretching through fields and mountains, my mind full of thoughts. I remembered those days at the mansion, Vincent coughing weakly but his eyes bright. The truth always finds a way to surface, Andres, as long as you're brave enough. Those words now fueled me, though anxiety lingered. How would the town react? A few months later, the moment arrived when the town held the grand opening of a major public project, one known to be backed by an anonymous donor. I followed the news from Bend, a new community health center on the outskirts of Knoxville, with free clinics, a children's play area, and a small library. Local media praised it. An anonymous donor saved the project from collapse. I knew well it was one of Vincent's contributions, $10 million through intermediaries. The opening ceremony took place on an autumn morning with a crowd gathered in the central square. I decided this was the time to return and reveal everything. I drove back to Knoxville quietly, my heart pounding with anticipation. Would they recognize me immediately? Would there be trouble? I parked far away, wore an old jacket, carried a suitcase full of documents, and blended into the crowd like an ordinary attendee. I quietly returned to the town, bringing all the files, documents, and evidence, appearing as a regular participant among the crowd. The square was packed, hundreds of locals, town officials, and children waving flags. The organizers were on stage, speakers blaring festive music. I stood at the edge of the crowd, scanning around. My parents were somewhere, perhaps whispering with neighbors. My heart raced with anticipation, hands gripping the suitcase tightly. This was it. When the organizers began thanking the anonymous donor, the mayor's voice boomed. "We extend our deepest gratitude to the anonymous donor who made this miracle possible. Without them, this health center would not exist." The crowd applauded, but I knew this was my chance. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage amid spreading surprise across the square. My footsteps were heavy but resolute. The crowd fell silent upon seeing me, a familiar but ostracized face. Many recognized me. Whispers, boos, and disdainful looks erupted immediately, forcing the organizers to intervene for order. "Hey, it's Andres. What are you doing back? Stealing the fortune wasn't enough?" Someone shouted from the crowd. Boos echoed. "Get out of here! Fraud!" The mayor raised his hand. "Everyone calm down. Who are you? What do you want?" My heart pounded wildly, cold sweat breaking out, but I stayed composed, my voice steady. "I am Andres Ortiz. I'm here to reveal the identity of the person behind all the funding for this project." The crowd fell silent for a second, then grew even noisier. "What did he say? What do you know?" The mayor frowned, but let me continue, perhaps out of curiosity. I opened the suitcase, took the microphone from the organizers, my heart racing with drama. This moment could change everything. Under the intense attention, I presented the legal records, bank statements, and documents confirming donations spanning many years. Holding the microphone, my voice slightly trembling but clear. "Here are bank statements, a $10 million transfer for this health center, routed through anonymous intermediaries. And here are hundreds of others, totaling nearly $700 million over 25 years for hospitals, schools, and community welfare." I held up the documents. The organizer's projector displayed them on the large screen behind me. The crowd gasped, whispering, $700 million. Who gives that much? I continued. That anonymous donor was Mr. Vincent Delacroix. The organizers and townspeople were stunned to learn that the anonymous donor was Vincent Delacroix, the man they had branded as miserly and cold for years. The mayor stood speechless. "Vincent Delacroix? That stingy old billionaire?" The crowd fell completely silent, then murmurs spread. Impossible. He was a miser, wasn't he? The atmosphere of the ceremony changed entirely. Some people began to cry. Others stood frozen in regret. Some bowed their heads in silent apology, blaming themselves for old prejudices. An elderly woman near me sobbed, "Oh God, I used to mock him. But he helped my child go to college through that fund." Sobs spread. The festive mood shifted to deep emotion. Anticipation surged in my heart. They were changing, but was it too late? I spotted my parents in the crowd, heads bowed in shame, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My father stood there, face flushed. My mother wiped tears, avoiding my gaze. My heart ached with sorrow. They had disowned me. Now, with the truth exposed, would they regret it? Once the truth was clear, I announced the establishment of a charitable foundation in Vincent Delacroix's name, focused on healthcare, education, and community welfare, just as he had quietly pursued. I took a deep breath. To continue Mr. Vincent's legacy, I announced the creation of a foundation in his name, with initial capital from the estate he left. The foundation will support healthcare, education, and welfare, quietly, as he always did. The entire town erupted in emotion. Applause thundered endlessly, many shouting Vincent Delacroix's name in belated tribute. The cheers spread, children waved flags, officials clapped. The mayor stepped forward, voice trembling. "Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. We were truly wrong about Mr. Delacroix." Standing amid that scene, I quietly observed, knowing that Vincent had finally been seen for who he truly was, in a way he never demanded but fully deserved. I stepped down from the stage, tears streaming down my face, heart racing with emotion. "Mr. Vincent, you have been recognized." The crowd surrounded me, apologizing, thanking me, but I only smiled, my heart filled with dramatic peace. The mayor shook my hand firmly, his voice trembling. "Andres, you've changed everything. We owe Mr. Delacroix a huge apology. On behalf of the people of this town, I thank you for Mr. Delacroix's contributions and for what you've done." Local residents crowded around. Several elderly women hugged me, sobbing. I used to think he was a miser, but he saved my grandchild from illness. Children waved and shouted Vincent's name, and the atmosphere in the square shifted from a grand opening ceremony to an impromptu memorial. I looked around and saw my parents still standing there, heads bowed, too ashamed to approach. My heart ached with sorrow. They had disowned me over money. Now, with the truth exposed, would they dare meet my eyes? The ceremony ended, but Vincent's story and mine had only turned to a new page. Not long after the public revelation of the truth, I decided to return to the town, this time not as someone scrutinized or judged, but as one who had chosen to stay. I remained in Bend for a few more weeks to settle matters, but my heart told me Knoxville was home, even though it had once driven me away. I drove back, my heart racing with anticipation. Would people accept me? Would the Delacroix family cause trouble? I bought a small, modest house on the outskirts, an old wooden home with a vegetable garden in the back, not far from the center, but quiet enough. No flashy signs, no luxurious furnishings, just a place where I could live normally. Then I opened my own restaurant, small like the old family diner, simply named Ortiz's Corner, specializing in traditional Mexican food. I painted and repaired it myself, hung a modest wooden sign, and started with fresh ingredients. My heart pounded as opening day arrived. No VIP invitations, no big advertising, just an ordinary morning with the aroma of toasted bread wafting through the air. Anxiety mixed with hope. Would anyone come? Would they come out of curiosity or for the food? Unlike before, no one pointed fingers or sneered at me. Curiosity gave way to quiet respect. On the first day, only a few regulars from the old diner stopped by, smiling. "Andres, congratulations. The food is delicious." Then gradually word spread, not because I was a billionaire, but because of the stories about Vincent and the charitable foundation. People began coming, bowing their heads in greeting. "Thank you for telling us about Mr. Delacroix." There were no envious glances, only genuine smiles. My restaurant gradually grew busier, not because of the fortune I had inherited, but because of the way I worked, the way I treated people, and what they had heard about who I was. I waited tables as before, chatted with customers, remembered their names, and served each dish with care. An old man who had once mocked Vincent now sat in the corner, whispering, "You're like him, kind without showing off." My heart warmed, but I still felt anxious. Would this peace last? Would the past return? Sometime later, the town officially announced the erection of a memorial to Vincent Delacroix and held a graveside ceremony as a belated tribute to the contributions he had quietly made to the community. I read the news in the local paper, my heart racing with emotion. A bronze statue in the square engraved with his name and the words, "The Silent Generous One." The graveside ceremony took place on a cool autumn afternoon, with a crowd gathered around his grave in the suburban cemetery. I arrived early, standing silently by the statue, watching people file past, bowing their heads and bringing flowers along with their regret. The mayor delivered a speech. Mr. Vincent Delacroix was not stingy. He is our hero. People placed flowers one by one and whispered belated apologies. A feeling of peace mixed with sorrow rose within me. Peace because he was honored, sorrow because it was too late. My heart raced with the drama of the moment. Vincent, can you hear this? The crowd that once mocked you is now weeping for you. I realized that in the end, Vincent was remembered not for his money, but for what he had chosen to do in silence. Not as a stingy billionaire, but as a silent philanthropist who helped without needing recognition. The ceremony ended with the echoing church bells, and I lingered alone, stroking the gravestone. Thank you, Vincent. You changed everything. Anxiety mingled with relief. The story ended beautifully, but I knew my journey continued. My life gradually returned to a normal rhythm. I no longer harbored resentment or blame toward my parents, but I had also learned to set clear boundaries to protect myself. After the graveside ceremony, my parents came to my new restaurant, standing silently at the door for a long while before stepping inside. Their faces clearly showed hesitation and shame. My father spoke first, his voice hoarse and slower than usual. Son, we've thought a lot over these past days. What we said and did before. We're sorry. We let greed blind us to what mattered most. My mother stood beside him, eyes red, clutching his sleeve tightly. I don't dare hope you'll forget everything. I only hope you know. We were truly wrong. I was silent for a few seconds, then stepped forward to embrace them. My voice was calm, without reproach, but also without avoidance. I forgive you, but from now on we need to live more simply. I don't want money to come up in our family conversations anymore. If it does, I'll stop it right there. My father nodded, his eyes downcast. I understand. I don't want to lose you again. My mother said softly, her voice trembling but sincere. I just want to sit and eat with you, talk like before, not about money. From then on, I chose to maintain a balanced distance, not estrangement, but enough to prevent money from once again dominating the relationship that had hurt me. They accepted it. We met more often at the restaurant, talking about everyday things, new dishes, regular customers, the weather, health. Each time we met, my heart still fluttered a little. Would they really have changed? But time answered in place of any promises. My parents began helping at the restaurant, wiping tables, assisting in the kitchen, joking with customers like in the old days. And for the first time in a long while, I felt our family was relearning how to be together. Not through money, but through respect and a belated yet genuine understanding. I continued living simply without ostentation, quietly maintaining the Vincent Delacroix Charitable Foundation and helping those less fortunate than myself. I didn't buy luxury cars or a big house, just the wooden home, the small restaurant, and the foundation operating silently. Scholarships for poor children, medical support for patients, community building. I worked with Hargrove via email, making anonymous transfers as Vincent had done. Each month I reviewed the reports, my heart racing with anticipation. Had the foundation helped someone? A thank you letter from a school. Thank you to the anonymous donor. I smiled, continuing his legacy. On one visit back to Vincent's grave, I stood for a long time, recalling the path I had traveled, from humiliation and loneliness to understanding and continuation. It was a drizzly afternoon. I came with a bouquet of white daisies and stood silently for hours. Memories flooded back. The humiliating $1 tip at the diner, the visits during his illness at the mansion, the tense trial, the solitude in Bend, and the day I revealed the truth. My heart raced with emotion. From a waiter once scolded, I now stood here as an heir carrying the responsibility to change an entire town. I understood that Vincent's greatest lesson was not in the vast fortune, but in how one chooses to live kindly even when no one is watching. I bowed my head and whispered by the grave, You taught me to live rightly, Vincent, not for fame, not for recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. I realize that people are often too quick to judge someone based solely on appearances, reputation, or circulating rumors. I had once been part of that crowd until I entered Vincent's life. He wore the label of miserly and cold, scorned and shunned by the entire town, but behind that mask was a quiet, profound, and deeply compassionate man. The truth about him lay not in what others said, but in what he silently did when no one was watching. From Vincent, I learned that true kindness needs neither display nor credit. When placed in the right hands, it naturally leaves lasting traces and value over time. The donations he left without his name changed the lives of thousands, even though they never knew who stood behind them. He accepted misunderstanding and loneliness just to ensure his goodness didn't become a bargaining tool or cheap boasting. And finally, I understood that living kindly does not mean losing oneself. Help others when you can, but also know how to maintain necessary boundaries so that past wounds don't become reasons to hurt yourself or others. I chose to live that way, simply kindly but wisely enough to protect myself. Vincent, you changed me forever, not with money but with the way of life you left behind. I recalled those early days in Bend, lonely by the river, pondering the lessons. Now back in Knoxville, I live in peace. The restaurant bustling, the foundation active. My parents are gradually changing. We dine together, laugh and chat without mentioning money. My heart still flutters when I think of the future. Will the foundation grow? Will the town forget Vincent? But I know his legacy is immortal.